Hi, everyone. Welcome to Qubole On Demand. Welcome to our webinar on Open Cloud Data Lake Platform, and we are going to talk about Qubole with respect to it. Before we start talking about Qubole, we would like to share with respect to what we are seeing in the market with different type of your industry peers who are basically leading with data. What we are seeing is companies like Netflix, Expedia, Visa, Lyft, they are winning in their markets with data. What they're doing is they are learning from the past with this data. They are understanding the present with the data which is coming in, and then they are trying or predicting the future with respect to their customer behavior, their business behaviors with this data. This data, when we look from the past side, they generally do business intelligence with that historical data. With respect to the present data which they are getting, they generally do data exploration, they do analytics, and this is mostly hinged on real-time and streaming data. When you combine all this type of data, they are using AI and ML models to do the predictive analysis with respect to the future, what will be the customer trends, what will be the consumption trends, where the growth is, where do they need to invest, how to make the better customer experiences. So as they move on, what we see is they are using a modern data architecture to basically do all these three things. When you look at the modern data architecture, they are using a data warehouse with a standardized ETL concept for their traditional business intelligence. This has always been there and it will remain there, and it has a role to play. What we have seen a change there, which is beneficial to all the enterprises, is that there has been a secular trend of moving data warehouse towards the cloud to get the benefits of the clouds with respect to data warehouse workflows. But when we are looking at the modern data architecture, there is a whole new things which are happening with the data. People are using data lake to basically do data exploration, ad hoc analytics, and then streaming analytics, and then AI ML. And what is underpinning it is the continuous data engineering, where you basically build your pipelines, you build your workflows, you do data processing, end-to-end automated process of data pipelines to feed into these use cases. All this is being built on the data lake. But with the data lake, as you try to do these many type of use cases, and then you are building different blocks with respect to the underlying integrations or outbound data sharing, you need a data lake platform, a platform which basically helps you take the benefits of your data lake into these use cases and scale as you grow. And that's where Qubole comes in. So Qubole is an open data lake platform. When you look at a data lake, what you need is in the data lake with respect to a platform is you need a runtime layer, a services which basically helps you take the advantages of all the underlying benefits of the cloud infrastructure, which can be Kubernetes, which can be AWS, which can be Google Cloud, which can be Microsoft Azure. On top of it, you basically are able to do a lot of stuff with the data management. Here comes the story with respect to the meta store or something with respect to data attribute. And on top of it, as you basically automate the pipelines, you build your frameworks, you do data processing, data engineering services become important. And all this, when combined together, feed into a peculiar fashion for the different type of use cases, data analytics. So data engineering, data management, platform runtime should basically tailor towards giving you the best experience with respect to data analytics. Example can be an open source engine of a Presto or Hive to do ad hoc analytics there. So your cloud underpinning is totally tailored towards that. You get the toolkits and everything with respect to data engineering, tailored towards the data analytics, and then whatever you are doing with respect to your data management is also tailored towards that. Same applies to streaming analytics and also the machine learning pipelines which you built. But as more and more of the data lake adopters are becoming enterprises, they are not just looking for these layers, but they are also looking the enterprise gradeness with respect to security and compliance, system monitoring, governance. for the different type of regulatory frameworks, organization policies they deal with. A common example here is the GDPR and CCPA, where we see people quite a bit trying to handle the right to erasure, right to forget within your data lake. And a platform should be able to help you with that when you are trying to do that. Uh, so with that, I would like to now let my colleague speak to like how Qubole in action basically provides you benefits and the feature and functionality for all these foundational pieces.
All right, great. Hey, thanks for that. Now let me jump into the demo here. And what I wanted to do was give you an overview of the Qubole Open Data Lake platform. And as we heard just now, the importance of the data lake platform and an open data lake platform is one that really kind of caters to a variety of different use cases, both on the consumption side as well as on the ingestion side. And in doing so, my demo, the flow of the demo will follow me showing you different types of persona that are typically wanting to access the data lake or data in the data lake. And then we'll flip to the data engineering persona and how Qubole accelerates their abilities to do things on the data lake. And then we'll take a look at the runtime engines and the ability for Qubole to drive automation to make this really, really simple. So that being said, as you can see here, I've got a Tableau instance open. And Tableau is one of many BI tools or analytics tools that the analyst persona, so a lot of our customers will have groups of analysts that want access to running queries against the data lake or building dashboards and exploring the data that's available in the data lake. And Tableau is one of the many tools that Qubole supports. In fact, for Tableau specifically, we have a native connector built in for it, as you can see here, Qubole Presto. Big difference here between just Qubole Presto and connecting to a vanilla open source Presto cluster is a couple of things. One is Qubole really drives a lot of the automation here. And if you'll see, the endpoint is us.qubole.com. That's one of Qubole's several production endpoints. And this is the same endpoint that you would use in the workbench, which I'll show you in a moment. And then you're pointing to a cluster label. This really takes away or I should say it simplifies this for the analyst persona, not having to worry about, well, what's the host name of my Presto cluster? What's the port? So on and so forth. In fact, in this case, if there's nothing running behind the scenes, Qubole will auto start that cluster for the user. So that said, I actually have a connection set up here. As you can see, this one is also on us.qubole.com. Got a schema here, and this schema is the e-commerce database. I'm actually going to be using this throughout the demo as an example data set. What this data set is it contains some sample data around products, orders, so it really represents an e-commerce data set. And so what I've done here to save us some time is I've already kind of dragged and dropped a couple of tables here, order items and products, and I've got a join on the product ID in both of the tables. As you can see, it starts to render some of the information here. I can look at some column information. But then, with a few clicks, I can actually get some visualization and dashboarding around this stuff. So let's say I wanted to look at the product name. All right, got some names here. And then let's say I wanted to grab a view of how many were ordered. So let's take the item quantity, make that a count. All right, we start to get some scatter plots here. It's not really helping me visualize this really well. So let's see if we can grab another view of this. All right, that's much better, right? So I can start to see either that one or maybe this one. Gives me the user quick couple of clicks into figuring out, which products are most often ordered. So you can see it looks like there's a Perfect Fitness Rip Deck and then some Nike Polo and things like that. Again, this is just example data, but really just wanted to show you how easy it is for an analyst that's using a tool like Tableau. It could be Qlik, it could be Power BI, to start to analyze the data that's available to them in their data lake. In this particular example, all of the data that's backing all this sits in an Amazon AWS S3 bucket. As we heard earlier, Qubole supports multiple clouds, so that could have very well been data in GCS, on GCP, or on Azure. So now what I'd like to do is actually walk you through the UI for Qubole. And again, I'm in us.qubole.com, and carrying on the same story or the same user, the persona of the analyst, I might want to run some freeform SQL queries. Qubole out of the box provides a workbench for that. We're already looking at that. As a matter of fact, I'm in a feature called collections, which allows me to sort of save off my queries. As you can see here, let's go to the table explorer. The very same data set and metadata we were looking at in Tableau is available here. And again, the same tables, obviously. If I wanted to take a quick look at what this metadata is, the catalog that, so the data management capabilities within Qubole allow me to browse the table metadata. This is a Hive table, which is backed by a location on S3. Here's the location. This particular data set was, imported by Scoop. But I can also get some interesting table insights here. For example, if I was an analyst that was first time trying to query this data, I might need some help. I might need to go find out, hey, what are the columns that I should be looking at? Or are there any of my colleagues that I can go and tap on the shoulder and get some help with writing a query around this or whatnot? And so the table insights will give me some of that information that's valuable for me to be productive, but then it also helps drive collaboration. Now, I can just run this in here, and similarly, it'll kick off an instance of that query, and you'll see some details about what's happening here. It's submitting the query, it's processing it. This is running on a Presto cluster, and then it spits back the results. I can download the results, or I can link to this particular query, share the results and the query with a colleague of mine that might be interested, and they can have a look at that without having to rerun it. All right. So we looked at briefly the analyst persona. The data scientist is another persona that takes advantage of Qubole and the simplicity of accessing the data lake via Qubole. In particular, the data scientist will likely leverage the notebook feature. I've got a number of notebooks here. And actually, before I jump into it, there's two different ways you can use notebooks in Qubole. There's the original Qubole notebooks, which are based on Apache Zeppelin. And then we now support Jupyter integration as well. Jupyter out-of-the-box notebooks, I can show you both of those. But carrying along sort of the same story that we've been working with the e-commerce insights. Let's say, we've done the analysis and we've shown you how an analyst might look at this. If I'm a data scientist, I'm using notebooks, got some paragraphs here, and I can actually rerun this and show you that it'll actually, basically doing the same thing. What's really important to a data scientist typically is not only having access to something like a notebook interface, but the reason that's important is that it gives them a number of things. And one of those things is the ability to leverage a mix of interfaces or languages. In this case, I'm using PySpark, right, which is Python. But within my Python, I've got SQL embedded, and that allows me to run queries against the data sets and explore the data. Again, this is the same example. I think this is the top 10 products by quantity ordered. I might look at raw data. So in this particular table, the access logs table, this is log data. It's a little bit less structured. So I can see here I've got a query that gives me the ability to break this down by views. I might parse that URL and pick out the actual product and make that a little bit more presentable, but cut some corners here for this demo. And here's an example where I'm using Scala, right? So I had Python, I had SQL. I've got some Scala in here, and what I'm doing with this is I'm actually using the machine learning library FP Growth, which is built into Spark, This is a frequency pattern matching library. What I'm doing in this particular paragraph is I'm building a model, and I'm actually running the model against my data set. And this model, this frequency matching model will allow me to then do things like market basket analysis. I can do things like, what are the common combinations of products that are bought together? So I'll let this particular model run. It takes about 30, 40 seconds to execute. Oh, took a little bit faster this time. And then I can take the outputted data frame or object that I put together where I collected all this information. And then I can start to sort this, by the number of times they're bought together. As you can see, I've got 2 product combinations, and then I've got another one which shows 3 product combinations. But again, the idea is really to show you, as a data scientist, the different types of things I can use Qubole for. So not only, again, do I have access to SQL, I have access to Spark using Scala, as well as Python. I can do machine learning, as you've seen here. Finally, the other thing I might do is I might publish some of the stuff so that a business user can, just run it and try to, view what's happening via a dashboard. So Qubole allows me to take this notebook. I can create a dashboard out of it. I've actually got one here. The dashboard, as you can see, will effectively drop all of the code or hide all of the code so that a business user, can actually execute those paragraphs without having to worry about the code. And again, this dashboard feature can be published as an output of the data scientist's work. Okay, so let's take that a little bit further. So again, as a data scientist, I might then want to turn around and wear the hat of a data engineer and do things like schedule this notebook. I might have some steps in here that prepare data for me, and I might need to run that on a schedule. I might need to invoke it via, programmatically via Airflow or something like that. Let's take a look at the first example of being able to schedule this stuff. So Qubole has a job scheduler, and it's a built-in job scheduler. The job scheduler will allow me to do things like schedule a number of different command types. The one we're interested in is the Spark notebook. So you can see I can come down here, and let me pick my Spark cluster here, and you'll see, what was it called, e-commerce insights notebook. That's the notebook we were using. If I had this notebook parameterized, I could pass arguments to it on the fly. So if I'm running this on a daily or an hourly or even a cron, I might want to pass in the current time of the execution of the notebook so that we can pass that into your code within the notebook paragraphs. The Qubole note scheduler. So the Qubole scheduler is managed by the Qubole, within the Qubole tier. The great thing about this is that if my cluster is down, what I mean by down is there are no running, instances associated to that cluster, Qubole will auto-launch that cluster, process the job, run it, and then if the cluster is idle after that, it will terminate it. So really great feature for cost savings. The other thing is, obviously, I want to productionalize this. I might want to send out notifications if something fails. I have the ability to integrate this with email or PagerDuty. There's a number of things that we would support there in terms of endpoints. Really cool feature for being able to get alerted if your job fails, say in the middle of the night. So again, that was a really quick and simple way for me to schedule jobs. If I'm doing something a little bit more advanced, say as a data engineer building pipelines where I'm ingesting data from multiple sources, this particular scheduler might be a little bit too simple, or I might want to do something, using Airflow. Now, I haven't gotten to the clusters part yet, but one thing I do want to show you is Qubole supports the ability to create an Airflow cluster. And once you've got that running, you have the ability to access the Airflow web server UI, as I've got here. And the data set that we've been playing with so far is actually built using an Airflow DAG. So if you're familiar with Airflow, Um, uh, Great. If not, Airflow really briefly is an open source project that allows data engineers to orchestrate, or data scientists as well, to orchestrate workflows. And the way that's built is using, what's called a DAG, directed acyclic graph. And really, this is Python code where I would do things like define tasks. As you can see here, I've got a Qubole operator, which is creating the schema of my tables. Then I've got another Qubole operator where I'm importing data, and so on and so forth. And then I'd basically define the flow of what these all look like, and then you get a nice visual of what that looks like when you click on the graph view, and you can kind of see what's happening here. So what's happening here is that Qubole is actually importing these things from MySQL database. So I'm going to click on this Go to QDS button here. That actually should take me to the actual data import instance. As you can see, this is a data import instance. It's pulling in data from a MySQL database. I'll actually show you what that looks like, and populating a Hive table. And what that really is Qubole allows you to create connectors. So I'm going to go to the Explore page, check out my data connections. I've got some shared ones here. So that e-commerce data set that we're playing around with, the data originates from a MySQL database, and there's a number of tables out there. Just as an example to show that we can pull data in from MySQL, you can see here, here's my MySQL instance on AWS. It's an RDS, and I've got the order items table. I've got the products table. I can kind of browse this stuff once I get a connection. So giving you a feel for how, as a data engineer, Qubole makes the ability to stitch these things together really easy, productionalize them. There's a number of things you can do in terms of troubleshooting, where I have access to the logs all in the UI. I can do all this programmatically as well. I also have access to back-end information. So in this case, it was a Hive query, so I can access the TES UI, and you'll see the ability to drill into this stuff. Again, really powerful for that persona, keeping things really simple. The great thing is all of the back-end stuff, like if you're talking Spark and the Spark UI or Yarn, all of the back-end histories are made available offline. That's all stored back out into the customer's S3, and you can fetch that stuff all offline. All right. We've talked about 3 different personas so far. We've talked about the analyst, data scientist, data engineer. What I want to do now is touch on the cluster and what that is, right? So, I gave you a glimpse of that when we looked at the Airflow clusters, but if I go to the clusters page, if I'm an admin or even a data engineer, or maybe there's a platform team that owns sort of the operational aspect of this stuff, what clusters are in Qubole? They're ephemeral, right? They can be in multiple states. They can be down. As you can see, I've got a number of inactive clusters. There are no physical instances running. And by the way, when we're talking about instances running, that stuff's running in our customers' VPCs on AWS or in GCP, in their tenants on Azure, right? There's a control plane and there's a data plane. The data plane runs within our customer's environment. So this is actually orchestrating EC2 instances within your cluster. Nope, looks like one of the clusters is actually going down because it was idle, right? Somebody was using another cluster in here when it was idle. But just to show you how easy it is to create a cluster, click that. Let's say we want to pick Spark. I give it a name. Right, I've got the versions. A lot of this stuff will be defaulted to what works best. And in Spark's case, we've got the R instance types picked. The thing I really wanted to highlight in here is this minimum worker nodes, maximum worker nodes. This is one of the key value pillars for Qubole, and that is our ability to help manage our customers' cloud spend. Right, we have a best-in-class total cost of ownership model when it comes to running big data or data lakes in your cloud. And this right here is one of the reasons why. There are three key reasons, right? One is the ability to auto launch the cluster when it's time to be used, whether that's coming in via Tableau or the API or the UI. You'll see that the Qubole instances will be fired up when somebody submits a job against the clusters. The second reason is this, and I'll get to the third in a moment. This is the workload-aware auto-scaling boundaries, if you will. And what this allows you to do is set boundaries. So if you've got cost that you want to kind of limit on or SLAs that you need to meet, this is how you would do it. Qubole will take care of automatically spinning up instances based on the workload. That intelligence, there's a ton of intelligence put in there, both on being able to upscale right at the right time with the exact number of nodes that you need, as well as downscale aggressively when the cluster instances aren't being used. Like I said, we've got a ton of IP around there. There are numerous white papers on this stuff, but the idea of being able to pack containers and offload, shuffle data and things like that really make this a valuable feature. In fact, this is a chart which is available in the product, right? I'm actually using a separate internal account here so that I can give you one with a good amount of usage, and you'll see, this is a cluster nodes versus time chart, and all of the little spikes here are when we burst up and add nodes to the cluster. A couple of things to notice here. Notice how how not every spike is at the same height. Again, really exemplifying the fact that we're going to only add the number of nodes that you need. And then notice how skinny they are or thin they are. That's kind of showcasing how quickly things will downscale. Sure, this is over a span of a few days, but if I were to zoom in on this, you'd get a similar feel. Now, I mentioned that there are three things that drive a good TCO model within Qubole. The third thing is our ability to leverage volatile instances. So on AWS, spot instances. We've put some intelligence in there where we become really immune to spot loss. Again, things like being able to rebalance the cluster when your nodes, when you lose spot. The ability to leverage spot fleet, spot block. There's a number of things we've put in there that drive the ability to use spot. And for those of you that don't know spot's discounted instances on AWS. And the trade-off is, and why people tend to shy away, is because they're volatile and they can be reaped at any instance. But again, Qubole's put a lot of intelligence around that. And we've seen the ability to save customers anywhere from 50 to 60%. All right. So yeah, let me actually show you what this means, right? So as I mentioned, this is going to drive the workload-aware autoscaling capabilities. I've got a cluster here. This is a shared Qubole account, and there's a cluster here that our team uses for some BI purposes. I picked this one because it gives me a nice view. One of the things that you'll see here is there's a chart that gives you node versus time, and this is in the product. What you're looking at here are, for this particular cluster, over time, how many nodes it was using, again, graphed over time. Few things to notice here. First of all, notice that there are these spikes. These spikes represent our ability to scale up the cluster very rapidly and then scale down the cluster when it becomes idle very rapidly as well. All of the white space you're seeing there, that's all cost savings, right? Because otherwise you would have had a cluster that had, let's say 20 nodes running all the time. Now, the other thing to notice is I mentioned there were three things that drive the cost savings, and I talked about two of them, the cluster lifecycle management, that's our ability to auto-start and auto-terminate clusters, the workload-aware autoscaling, which is the up and down that you're seeing here. The third thing is our ability, Qubole's ability to allow our customers to leverage spot instances. And the spot instances are represented by this light blue teal color. Again, that's spot in AWS, but we do this on all of the clouds. So on GCP, these are the preemptible instances on GCP. Again, those are volatile instances for folks that might not be familiar with that. The clouds provide a way for you to leverage volatile instances at a discounted price. These are excess capacity usually. The trade-off is that they can take those away unannounced almost, and therefore many people tend to shy away from that because of the instability. What Qubole has done is built in intelligence into the platform, which allows our customers to use Spot instances at massive scale. We've had customers use 90, 95% Spot, in some cases 100% Spot clusters. So over the last year, Qubole's helped our customers save $230 million, right? And that's compared to using an alternate solution, something like EMR or otherwise. If you look at since Qubole's inception, since 2011, we've been able to help our customers save over $500 million in cloud spend. That's pretty amazing. And if I look at that like on a single instance, we've seen customers come over from a competitor or an alternative solution, save anywhere from 50 to 60% on their cloud spend. And this is how it's done, as you can see here. So I wanted to end with one more quick thing. As you use Qubole and the Open Data Lake platform, there's a notion of clusters. These clusters are generally scaling up and down. We have the ability to support multiple workloads, multi-tenant on the same cluster, so you can drive for really good efficiency when multiple users are allowed to share the same cluster, and Qubole takes care of the scaling up and down. With that, there are trade-offs, right? If everybody's logging in, you got different types of personas. There are trade-offs. And you need governance, right? So Qubole provides the ability to, have fine-grained access control, role-based access control to different functions and features, and that's all managed through here. As you can see, I can set up groups and roles. I might have data scientist users. I might have engineer users. I can give them access to different functions and features within the product. I can do this at the data level as well. I have column level masking capabilities, row level filtering capabilities. All of that stuff is built into the platform. The other aspect of governance is financial governance. The other thing that Qubole does is we provide data back to our customers, and we give them dashboards on being able to do things like attribute cost, right? There's a number of things that we provide out of the financial governance cost explorer piece. One of those is the ability to say, hey, what portion of the cost came from which users? And so in this example here, I've got a dashboard available. I can run that query within the dashboard. I can actually show you that. Oh, sorry, I just closed the book here. There we go. What we're looking at here is user attribution against a particular cluster. So I'm going to change that to the cluster that we were looking at earlier with the up and down spikes to really see which users are using this cluster the most and what percentage of cost we can attribute down to the user level, down to the command level, down to the job level. As you can see here, this is one of our team members who happens to be the head of our BI team and is obviously the one that's using this cluster the most. And then the top three are all in the BI team, and there's a number of folks that also use this data lake instance. Again, this is part of the Qubole Cost Explorer product. What we're doing here is we're shipping data into our customer's cloud object store and then providing them with a set of out-of-the-box dashboards or notebooks, which allow them to run and power use cases like cost chargebacks or return on investment analysis. There are notebooks that are geared towards total TCO, so I can get a view of how well am I doing? Am I using Spot instances? What percentage am I using Spot instances? What does my auto-scaling look like? That data is shipped to their cloud object store, so not only do they have the out-of-the-box notebooks that they can use to analyze that, they can slice and dice that, build alerts on top of it, whatever they wanted to do on top of that. So that said, as you can see, we took a long tour through Qubole, looked at a number of different features. There are several things that I've left off here. We'll probably have deep dive demos on various aspects. I wanted to thank you for your time and also let you know that if you're interested in taking Qubole for a test drive, we actually have a test drive available. It gives you access to Qubole for 14 days. It comes with some brilliant built-in examples, and that sits on top of an example data set that's available to you. So you have everything you need to start playing around with it. You can run through the use cases that I showed you here today. And then there are other things that are built in as well that you'll be able to play with. So take a look, and thank you again.